Section 4. You will hear part of a talk for tourism students about the London Eye, a modern tourist attraction in London. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 35. Now listen to the first part of the talk and answer questions 31 to 35.
Today, I want to focus on some of the major sites that attract tourists to cities, and I'm going to begin with the London Eye. This giant wheel has, in a very few years, become one of the major attractions of London, and thus in the world. It's both simple in concept and awesome in delivery. Its creators are husband and wife architects David Marks and Julia Barfield. It was on their kitchen table in South London in 1993 that the first drawings for the London Eye were made, as the couple, who usually worked directly for clients, were entering a competition, the brief of which was to design millennium landmarks for the capital. In fact, nobody won, and the whole idea was scrapped, but the couple remained convinced that their dream should be pursued. They started to piece the project together and were soon attracting the attention of the press. And it wasn't long before British Airways had started to show an interest and then became a partner. As the project unrolled, everyone involved began to realise the sheer scale of what they were undertaking. It would be the largest observation wheel ever built, and over 1,700 people from a total of 5 countries would play a part in its construction. Nearly every one of its many parts and techniques needed to be invented, simply because they had never existed before. Transportation of the components would be on a scale reminiscent of pyramid building. Bringing them in meant that large parts had to fit under the various bridges of the River Thames, so this had to be timed to coincide with tides along its length. And even when completed, the Eye continues to be huge in its requirements. A small army of people are employed to look after it, with 350 hours maintenance being required every week, and apparently strange demands, such as washing all its glass with nothing but distilled water having to be met. But the views the Eye affords across London make it all worthwhile, and it's easy to understand why the Eye has become one of London's chief tourist assets.
Now you have some time to look at questions 36 to 40. Now listen to the rest of the talk and answer questions 36 to 40.
So, how is that great wheel held up? How did it get there? The starting point was, of course, the ground, and while parts of the wheel itself were still being constructed in various countries, tension piles were being driven into the ground beside the River Thames. This was the first step, and once these were securely in place, a base cap was installed over them as a kind of lock, with 2 giant plinths pointing up onto which an A-frame was attached, like a giant letter. All this took many months and incredible effort, but meant that the spindle could be installed around which the great wheel would turn. Now the project really was in business, and the vast rim, with spokes like an outsized bicycle wheel, could be brought in. The passenger capsules were assembled and hung onto the rim, each one linked by mounting rings that would support eager viewers as they rose above London. And the last thing to be built is the first thing the visitor encounters, the boarding platform laid down underneath. The whole process employed thousands of people in total and was avidly watched by millions. How long the Eye will stay is uncertain, but any talk of dismantling it always meets with immediate protest.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet. That is the end of test 2.